Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sparring Partners Podcast. My name is Coby McKinley, and I am once again joined by my co-host, Brad Jones. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm back, son. We back.
He's
Partners
back.
back together.
3 weeks ago, I get lost in the woods. Brad, being the good friend that he is, he goes out to look for me. Little did he know, I'd already found my way back. And
Then
he just
I
got
spent
back.
an additional 2 weeks stranded in the woods and found nothing. So I just came home. Here we are. 3 weeks later, we're back to talk about some crazy, wild fights.
I know you were scarce on food and water, but you somehow managed to find a Wi-Fi connection and an ESPN Plus account.
Oh yeah.
If that's
I
not
had the
hardcore
essential.
MMA fan, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, you managed to make it back in time, so we were able to watch UFC 256, which just happened, and we'll be watching the fights this weekend. Although there is a certain sense of finality, it's the final pay-per-view of the year, but it's not the final card of the year. And before we get too far into it, doing the housekeeping right up front. If you're seeing us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment down below if you got any questions, comments, or concerns. If you are listening, but you would like to watch, if you'd like the screen shared goodness, you can come on over to youtube.com, Sparring Partners Podcast, and you can find us there. If you don't want to see our faces, which is understandable, you can look at Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor.fm, and a bunch of other places podcasts are found. As always, we're brought to you by FilmFightFreaks.com, where I will be doing the prelim predictions for the UFC cards moving forward. So it's a lot. It's a lot of them. There's a lot of fights. It's a lot of fights. There's a lot of footage. It is going to be interesting to see how what format I do, because I can't go. There's like nine. Okay, assuming no one catches COVID, there's like 9 prelims.
Yeah.
It would take me like 6 hours to do 5 fights on the Contender Series. So I'm slowly working my way through them, but it's been pretty cool. Yeah, it certainly is going to help with my enjoyment of the prelims again.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, back when we were younger, we just were able. I feel there were just less shows and there were less fighters.
It was
Like the
easier to be
roster.
invested.
Yeah, heavily invested. Like I'm invested now, but I didn't also have to be invested in like bills and like family stuff and all that. So, and also, not to mention, like I was saying, a big factor is that there were less shows and less fighters. And chances are, if a fighter got signed in the UFC, you probably saw him before, because the second tier MMA organizations back in like what, 2007, 2010, like they were second tier, but they weren't like second tier. They were like, you had Jacare and Rockhold knocking around, and while in 2012, that was Silva going into Weidman, 2012.
Yep.
Yeah.
2012 in summer.
Yeah.
Wild time in the history of being a fight fan.
Oh God. Okay.
You go down the wrong
coughing.
fight. Oh no. Oh God. Struggling. There we go. Chase it with another one. I'll fix it. All right.
I just wanted to lube up the pipes,
There we go. We're back on track. Pipes are lube.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that this past weekend was UFC 256, headlined by Deiveson, Figueiredo, and Brandon Moreno. And the co-main event was Co-main event.
T Ferg and Oliveira.
Oliveira and T Ferg. And real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen, and we can get right to it. Take a look at the card. That beautiful, beautiful poster there. We got the 4 men. Got the main event, co-main event, and took place, of course. If it's not Abu Dhabi, it's taking place in Las Vegas. And so there were some notable things in the prelims, which we can, if you have any thoughts on them, definitely let me hear it. Because I feel like there were a few performances on the prelims. Because this card really was solid, especially if you're a hardcore fan. It was solid from top to bottom. There were things to see all through the card. Number 1, Chase Hooper, rebounding after his first career loss. Did you happen to see that, and what did you think of it, if you did?
Yes, I saw. I do believe I saw all these. I enjoyed it being a little bit of a shorter card, easier to get through all of them. Chase Hooper fight. Okay, so Chase Hooper, a real young kid, was getting beat up a large majority of that fight, but then pulls out a nice slick submission. That's all good, cool. The problem with him is he's in the situation of like an Oliveira was in when he first came in the UFC, or like a young Max Holloway was in, where like he's in the UFC too early. He's too young to be in the UFC, and he can get a win here and there because he has nice submissions, but it only keeps him around somewhere where he's in the deep end too far for him to be able to grow. I think it'd be best if they cut him, or at least sent him to one of their organizations that they have on Fight Pass, and let him get like a year or 2 of experience, because there just isn't a level to build him with. You have to keep getting guys that are really low on the totem pole to build him up, and they just don't have a lot of those. So he did get a nice win, but honestly, I'd still like to see Chase Hooper step away from the UFC, honestly, at this point in his career. Kid's 21 still. I mean, he's a kid.
Yeah, that's the overwhelming feeling I get from him as well. It's just when you get into the UFC so young, like you were saying, there's not there's a large roster, but there's not a lot of that, like there's not a lot to build off of as far as like fights that still make sense, honestly, because Chase Hooper, he has a higher stock than most 10-1 20-year-olds, so at a certain point it's thinking about what makes sense. And if you are a name fighter, really only 2 things make sense: fighters that you're gonna feed on pretty clearly, or fighters that are a bigger name or also a name. And to your point, I also, the rest of mixed martial arts is, it's just how far can a specialist go in the UFC, and how far can a specialist go at featherweight specifically. Traditionally one of the most competitive weight classes, one of the deepest weight classes. How far can a specialist really go? And a young one at that, inexperienced. So yeah, I mean, I think that it wouldn't be, I think it would be unprecedented to send someone back to the minor leagues, even though that they're like signing the UFC, and then say, actually, you know what? That was actually more of a developmental deal, so we need you to pick up a couple wins and tighten. But I mean, overall, a good win. It's just once the fight hits the floor, that's, I guess, he has the same problem as if JDS had knocked out Gane. It's like if JDS had won, the only thing that would have happened for JDS is that they would have moved him further up the ranks and had him fight someone that probably is more experienced and can hit even harder
It would only
and
get
can
worse.
hurt him worse.
Yeah.
So I feel like Chase Hooper's in a similar situation. Yeah, you tap out Peter Barrett, but next you're going to be taking on Gavin Tucker.
Yeah.
You know, which moving up the card, right? Tecia Torres looked the best she's ever been. Granted, she fought Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is not a nothing fighter. She's been around a little bit, even with only 7 fights. Sam Hughes is a name that you would recognize if you've been watching the UFC recently. And it was an eye injury. But leading up to that eye injury, Tecia Torres looked phenomenal. She won everywhere. What did you think about Tecia Torres?
She did look good. This was like a really short notice fight. Sam Hughes coming in on like a week and a half, 2 weeks notice or something. So overall, I didn't have too much to say about it, but Tecia Torres did look good. Doesn't do anything for her stock in the division, but solid win and a finish. She hasn't had a finish maybe ever. Definitely not in like a really, really long time. So yeah, good for her to actually get a finish.
Yeah, did you notice Sam Hughes' eye?
It looked weird.
It looked weird. Like a part of her eye was filling up with blood that, like, I didn't know the human body could get messed up like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I was up for
that. That's when you know an injury in MMA is bad. Is when you're just like, man, even when things go wrong, it can do that. Oh no. Then moving on up, Gavin Tucker taking on Billy Q. Good fight. Gavin Tucker came back after a hiatus and looked pretty good doing it. Because Billy Q had won 3 in a row in the UFC, and he looks young. Billy Q. He looks like he would be a young guy, but he's actually like 32. Gavin Tucker is 34, I think. So good. It was good. I don't, other than like the fight was entertaining, I don't have a ton to say about it. What about you?
No, it was fine. That's all I got.
Rate the fight. Fine. Good. Okay. Fiziev, Moicano.
There we go. I can talk about that.
My man. That looked awesome. The highlight. I wish I had it pulled. I didn't think to. It's beautiful. And Moicano has like pretty officially fallen off, huh?
Oh yeah, he's had a real rough run of it, like these last like 5 fights. But that being said, I mean, Fiziev is like, dude, he is super real. That guy is super compact and generates crazy power in the. I mean, yeah, I'm really impressed with that guy so far. He is on a tear.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think he might even be a little. He's a little shorter for the weight class, yeah. Well, 5'8". I mean, he's actually, yeah, in modern day lightweight, 5'8" is super short.
His college was the police academy.
Wait, what?
Yeah, under his college, it says he was at the Kyrgyzstan Police Academy.
Dang, man. Kyrgyzstan Police Academy was his college.
And apparently he's the number 21 best lightweight fighter in the world.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? That's a thing that's kind of weird about Tapology. Like one thing that's good but also bad. And one thing I've noticed a lot with their rankings. So their rankings are all user generated. So like I would make a list of my favorite or like my top fighters of all time or best current MMA lightweights. You would make your list. And then a bunch of other people would make their list. You throw it all together. They average it all out. That's how they get to Tapology rankings. And I feel like recency bias is massive with it. Because, yeah, like Listen, man, he's great. He's really good. But is he the 21st lightweight in the world? I mean, with power like that, he very well could be. But yeah, I mean, the Tapology rankings mean almost less than the UFC ones. So,
Yeah.
And he advances to 9-0. And then Cub Swanson getting one for the OGs. 37-year-old Cub Swanson stopping Daniel Pineda. Dope. He looked like Cub Swanson I watched as a boy. That's what he looked like, and it was awesome.
Yeah, he looked great coming back off of that ACL tear. He looked really good. That's a guy that's kind of on the trend. He was really the only guy on this entire card that bucked the trend of old guy gets completely obliterated by young up and comer guy. He was the one dude on the card that flipped the script and took out the young cat. Even though Daniel Pineda has an even crazier record than Cub Swanson does. Yeah, great fight.
Yeah, the way that Cub Swanson, you could tell, or at least I thought I could tell, that at first he was not moving the same way. He wasn't moving the way he normally does, which is to be expected. But the leg kicks from Pineda early, that was bothering him really quick. Really early in the fight, Cub Swanson did not like those the calf kicks from Pineda, and I thought it was going to go south from there. Because you know what? One thing that I've kind of noticed is that older fighters, they just even calf kicks are a recent thing. As far as like a widely used weapon, and the older fighters just the ones that were here before they were in vogue don't like them.
No, Rashad's talked about that. He's been like, thank God I got out of the sport, like right as those calf kicks were becoming super popular. He was like, I cannot stand those low calf kicks.
Yeah, they look horrible, and the older fighters seem to also think so. And then speaking of older fighters, Cyril Gane stops JDS. After JDS, actually, again, man, it's the same song every JDS fight. JDS was actually looking pretty good, and then he was face down on the canvas. It's it sucks to see, but I don't think you should fight anymore, man. I don't, especially not at least not at this level, not at the level that he's fighting at. Granted, I also don't want him to get cut because bare knuckle FC is a reality, and they prey on the vulnerabilities of former UFC fighters. So I guess that's a future career possibility for JDS. But beyond that, Gane looked awesome. That elbow, while it was illegal, it was not illegal. Doesn't really matter because it's not going to get overturned. So what did you think about the fight?
Yeah, we go way back with JDS. It's rough watching him get messed up again for like the fourth straight time getting knocked out. But it is what it is, dude. He's an old guy now. He's just an old man. And he's clearly not going to get anywhere near the UFC heavyweight belt again. So then the question is, okay, well, what are you doing here exactly? Do you just want to be a guy that like hangs out in the UFC and like, fights the dudes that are coming up that are 6-0? Or are you more interested in maybe going over to Bellator and then having a swing at Ryan Bader or potentially getting a belt in the last stage of your career? Because that's a guy, Junior's a guy that's like, 2-3 more years probably of fighting max. So yeah, honestly, I would probably cut him from the UFC at this point.
Yeah, it's a trend that is going to keep going after Dana White. Part of me thinks that Dana White being as public and specific as he was when he was like, yeah, it's going to be 60 fighters getting cut, some tough decisions. A part of me, granted, this is a very cynical take on that. Because maybe, Dana White probably was like, yeah, the decisions are tough. And yeah, 60 fighters are got to go. But I also think that it's a message to the old guys, especially the well-paid old guys, to be like, hey, if you're not going places in the sport anymore, you're probably going to get cut, or at the very least, you're not gonna like Overeem when you resign. Overeem's actually a bad example because he just keeps like kind of winning in a very Arlovsky-esque way. He just like will win. But yeah, like JDS, you might get an offer. It's not gonna be, it's not gonna be as much. And if it's not good enough, then I guess you're one of the tough decisions that we got to make.
It's forcing the hands of a whole generation of guys right now that like some of them are starting to see the writing on the wall. Like for instance, your Overeem, your Diego, and your Donald Cerrone. All three of those guys have come out and been like, I'm done soon. I don't have a lot longer left in me. I just want, either to go on one last run or just I want one or two more fights. But like those are all guys that have acknowledged, all right, it's about to end here. I'm just here to wrap up some loose ends, which is what I feel like the UFC's been doing with a lot of these guys lately. Just been like, okay, like with Anderson, heavy shoulder shrug, and Anderson being like, yo, wrap it up. Like we're letting you stay here, but this is going to be your last one, like because if you keep trying to go on, then we're going to cut you.
Yeah, and again, it just keeps going. Like this conversation, I think, is going to be. I would imagine these cuts probably have to do with a certain like fiscal year, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because I guess because if it's not linked to some end date, then it's kind of a meaningless statement. Like Dana White could have also said, like, we're going to cut 500 fighters with no end date. That could be like, in the next year, it could be in a decade. Like it doesn't, yeah, I guess it's true. He's going to cut the size of the roster, but in how long?
It's got to be related to them not having gates all year. Every single one of these cards, they've been denied a gate for it. So, it's like 10,000 minimum each time, especially on some of the bigger pay-per-views, like big money that they missed out on. So yeah, I'm sure they're like, all right, some of these old dudes that have big contracts or paying a lot of money to, and you're after getting fucked up, we're gonna quit doing business with you.
Yeah, I also think that it's probably like, okay, so we already agree we're not going to talk about it much, but the class action deal, right? I also have a feeling that letting a lot of these guys go and letting them sign other places, like Yoel, like letting them out his contract early, things of that nature, by some could be seen as an antidote to the argument that the UFC controls the market.
Yeah.
Sure. So, whatever. I'm again another, kind of cynical take, but it's the UFC, dude, and it's the fight game. So like there's not a ton of people looking out for these fighters outside of possibly their coaches. Yeah. Possibly.
You're right. One thing I do want to hit before we bounce on, real quick, that was mostly a discussion on JDS. I just want to touch on Cyril Gane real quick.
Yeah.
I personally am not that impressed with Cyril Gane. I haven't really paid attention to him much before this fight. I didn't see anything from him in the fight against JDS that made me be like, man, he's going to be a threat at the top of the division. I see him losing whatever his next fight is, because above JDS is going to, I mean, have him ranked at like number 7 or something in the heavyweight division now. I don't like his chances against any of those top heavyweights right now. But he could shock me and show me something that I haven't seen yet. But overall, he still looks fairly um, unmolded to me. I mean,
Yeah.
he's 6-0. So we'll see. He's been kind of shoved into the top of the division very quickly. But I'm
Well,
not personally all that impressed yet.
yeah. I mean, to me, um, he looks like a refined kickboxer, like a Muay Thai operator, but more like a European style kickboxing, and use the elbows to end the fight on Saturday. But yeah, I would agree. He's not a flashy heavyweight. He stops people, but he's not horrifying in the way that like Ngannou is horrifying. Um, Gane is big and he's very skilled on the feet. I have not studied him. I've not looked into his background, but I have to imagine that he had some sort of competitive kickboxing or competitive Muay Thai in his background.
Yeah, I believe it was extensive kickboxing record.
Yeah, because if not, he is a phenom at 7-0 to beat a former UFC champion. Granted, a diminished one, but I don't think there's many 7-0 heavyweights that could beat JDS, even in a diminished state. Because again, JDS looked good until he got stopped. And Gane, that's the thing that impresses me about Gane, right? Is that he's only 7-0 and he's already taken out a former champion. I think that his kickboxing experience came through. JDS was never able to make the fight dirty. He was never really able to get on the inside or use his punches effectively. And that was because Gon was very aware and moved well and used his kicks effectively. So yeah, I think he's young for a heavyweight. He's 30. Yeah, he's 30. He was born in 1990, and that's young for a heavyweight. So he's got time. And I do agree, though. There's no like one thing in particular about him that makes me go, "Oh, dang, you got to watch out for this with Cyril Gane." But he's clearly good. I mean, but yeah, there's nothing that like hooks me about him.
Yeah.
And Dern picks up a win. Gritty. And I skipped Kevin Holland. How could I? How could I? That was one of the sickest stoppages ever.
Yeah.
Against Jacare Susa. Punches from the bottom. Doing his best impression of Nico Price on good old Randy Brown. But Kevin Holland did it different. He did it with style, and he did it with a little centrifugal force. What did you think about Kevin Holland stopping Susa?
Oh yeah, I'm super impressed with Kevin Holland. That dude's a beast. He's one of the new generation of guys that just kind of come in here and fight all the time, and seems to have great results. For Jacare, basically copy and paste everything we just said about JDS. Old guy, looked old, fought old, is in a rough spot in his career where he's nowhere near a belt or title talks. Probably best for him to move on from the UFC unless he is content to play whatever this role is, where he just kind of is a gatekeeper to the top 15 essentially, which is what he already is. So
Yeah. I feel differently about him than I do JDS. JDS, I feel like maybe his UFC career could be over. With Jacare, I feel like his MMA career should probably be over.
Hmm.
Um,
You would
he
want to see Jacare and Musasi 3.
No,
Yeah,
I
I
do
would.
not.
I don't either.
Jacare got stopped with punches from the bottom. No, Jacare got stopped
Knocked it
with
dead.
punches from the bottom,
Yeah.
where he had someone on the ground and he got stopped. Dude, Jacare, Jacare got the fight to the exact location he wanted it to be. He did not want to stand with Kevin Holland. That was a recipe for bad things for his health. He gets the fight almost immediately exactly where he wants it and punches from the bottom. Like, I don't. Yeah, Kevin Holland used centrifugal force or whatever. But, I mean, let's be real. Jacare, or, okay, I'll put it like this. Does that punch stop anyone in the top 15 at middleweight?
I mean, no, and also they wouldn't be in that. They just wouldn't be in that position as it is.
No. Well, what I'm saying, yeah, yes. It was like Jacare. Um, he just was hesitant in those positions, and those are positions that he is dominant in, and it's his expertise. And it sucks. It's a thing that is we're coming on a. So in our time of watching MMA, we've been watching MMA for about 15 years, give or take a few years.
Mhm.
So right now we are coming upon a big wave of guys that we've watched over the past decade. It's unlike it. Guys have retired here and there throughout our time watching MMA. I feel like we're on the precipice of a wave of retirements, like a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
And even though the sport is young, we haven't seen something like this. Um, the amount of guys getting diminished by the sport in mass.
Hmm.
Um,
And that generation that was on their way out when we kind of first came in, like the Randys and the Chucks and the Titos and those kind of guys, right? They were generally already old guys. They were old guy fighting as it was, right? But like,
yeah,
I was thinking about this yesterday when we were watching JDS fight uh, Roy Nelson at UFC 117, or when we were watching him fight Shane Carwin, or when we were meeting him live in Indianapolis. He was the young guy that was murking all these old heavyweights. He was young, he was fast, he was the young dude on the scene. And it's crazy that like the life cycle of an MMA fighter happens like this. I mean, we're about to talk about Tony, the same thing. Like this stuff happens so fast. Like I remember it vividly, like it was yesterday that you come onto the scene. You're the new hot guy, and you're obliterating all these old dudes, and like you run through everybody, and then you're on top of the world. Like you get the belt or something, and maybe you defend it once or twice, and then a new young cat comes along and smacks you down, and then a couple of years later, you're done. Your whole run and your career could be in less than 10 years.
yeah, man, yeah, and that's what's weird is when we were watching him do that to like Gilbert Ivel when
Hmm.
he destroyed Gilbert Ivel. I don't know. I'd maybe seen Gilbert Ivel one time before. I didn't have a decade of watching Gilbert Ivel
Yeah.
and then be like, "Oh, Gilbert Ivel isn't that good anymore." Like, no, these are guys that like we met JDS in Indianapolis before he could speak English,
Mhm.
and we've watched him since then. He was I want to say he was in his 20s.
He
Yeah,
was
he was like,
20. That was like 2 or 3 fights before he even fought for the belt.
yeah. So
Like,
he was like in his like mid-20s.
yes,
He was a phenomenally young heavyweight.
yeah, because I want to say he was on like just his third fight in the UFC after when we met him, and then he would go on to fight Shane Carwin and then go for the belt afterwards.
Yeah, man. It's just yeah, we're about to see a wave of retirements, and not ones like, yeah, like a Tito Ortiz where he's just like, oh, my body's kind of beat up. I should leave now, or like dude. I watched, side note, I watched a video I got to send you. It's about Tito Ortiz, and it's like 5 minutes of him speaking, and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
It's already hilarious.
It's great. It's great. Let's go to Dern and Jandiroba. My thoughts on the fight. It was a really gutsy performance from Dern, and it was, I thought it was an exciting fight. She didn't get the finish. Dern did not, but this was a growing bout. This was a bout that really added to her growth as an MMA fighter. She had her nose broken. She had to deal with that. And I believe she said post-fight that it was the first time she'd ever had her nose broken. And those are things that she's going to have to learn to do. There's a concern with people who are young and super successful early on, like a Chase Hooper, where Dern gets her nose broken in this fight. For a lot of people who've been hyper successful with very little adversity, broken nose could be enough to totally wilt them. It could totally cause them to shrink in the moment. And Dern did not. She actually got more aggressive. So yeah, what do you think about the fight?
Yeah, no, I think it was good. A good performance. I mean, Dern got absolutely destroyed by that one chick that beat her, Amanda Ribas, and she's bounced back really well from that. Yeah, it was a good fight, good win. She's on track to be ranked, and then we'll start working up the rankings. That's all I got.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, yeah, it was a good fight, and it was an interesting bout because Jandiroba is also pretty dang good on the floor. Speaking of being on the floor, Tony Ferguson ended up there a whole lot in the co-main event against Charles Oliveira. Another guy we've been watching for a long, long time and has finally seemed to come into his own, which actually, he's probably not that dramatically different from his skill set maybe a couple fights ago on this run. But when you beat Ferguson, people pay attention. And yeah, what did you think about this awesome performance by Charles Oliveira?
This was it. Like, this card was great. That main event was great, but this fight has been the thing that I've been thinking about all week. It was the best performance on the whole. I mean, it has the biggest implications.
Yep.
It was absolutely incredible. I think the biggest factor with you're right. We've been watching Oliveira debuted in the UFC in 2010. We were still in high school. He was 20 years old at the time. He's 31 now. He's fought everyone. He's been in the UFC at featherweight and lightweight for just ever and ever and ever. And he's always had a super savage ground game, but he had terrible stand up. It was super weak. He didn't have takedowns. He had bad transitions.
Yeah.
Yada. The thing is, he's put it all together. He's got with the people that taught him good striking, that taught him, while he doesn't have great wrestling still, doesn't matter. He's found a way to get people to the ground. You just apparently walk straight over to him and just grab him, and just pick him up and throw him down. It just works because that just worked.
I thought his wrestling looked pretty good.
It did. It looked great because I couldn't believe that it was working the way it was.
He looked bigger. He looked bigger than Ferguson, which I didn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I was absolutely blown away by Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira, very well could be the next lightweight champion of the division. I think that he showed for sure that the Tony of the past 2 years would have gotten obliterated by Khabib. Now, Tony before the past couple of years, that would have been a different fight. But yeah, man, I was way more impressed at this performance than I even was at Gaethje's win over Ferguson, because that was just a sustained 5-round fight on the feet. It was great, but it was back and forth. Gaethje got dropped by Tony at a certain point in round 4, I think. There was none of that in this. Oliveira absolutely dominated Tony, had him dead to rights in the first round with an armbar. That was it. I mean, that was it. He, in all honesty, the man submitted Tony Ferguson in the first round. The only thing that was missing was the actual submission, because Tony just didn't tap and just sat there and got his arm broken. It was just masterful. That is the ground game that I wanted to see Khabib fight. But Khabib's smart. Khabib is definitely smart enough to get out now while he can, because like that's the kind of thing I want to see at the top of the lightweight division. Blown away by that performance from Oliveira.
Yeah, there were a few things that I thought. Also, let the record show. I totally guessed. We were watching the other night. I totally guessed about who he made his debut against. I was totally right. It was Darren Elkins. He tapped out Darren Elkins in 41 seconds in 2010. And I just want to take a look at this. This is one thing that comes from fighting in the UFC for a decade. The names on this list. Everyone. You like Darren Elkins, Efrain Escudero, Jim Miller, Nick Lentz, Dom Cerrone, Jonathan Brookins, Cub Swanson, Frankie Edgar, Andy Ogle. You remember Andy Ogle?
Yep.
Hatsu Hioki, Jeremy Stevens, Nick Lentz, Max Holloway, Miles Jury, Anthony Pettis, Ricardo Lamas, Will Brooks. Like, the names just don't stop.
The Will Brooks win. That was insane.
Yeah. Stops Will Brooks. Hatsu Hioki was do you remember Hatsu Hioki?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, they wanted to give him a title shot immediately. Yeah. He's like, I'm not ready. And then he turned right and got cut from the UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Know thyself, I guess. Way to go. Really, I just want to he in 2018, he beats Clay Guida, then Christos Giagos, Jim Miller, David Tamer, Nick Lentz, Jared Gordon. He wins a grappling bout against Lucas Barros, but that's the wrong sport. Kevin Lee, then Tony Ferguson, and
not only did he beat all those guys, he finished them all at lightweight. He finished all those guys.
Yeah, and what I came away with, right, was that Oliveira seemed to have grown into his body finally. Like watching him for all these years, we always saw his frame. It was like, God, man, his limbs are so long. And he always relied on leverage for his grappling. Well, now he looks like he has really grown into his body strength-wise. So now he's able to use his phenomenal leverage, but also just some straight-up power, picking up Tony Ferguson, dropped him on the mat. And another thing about him, I think that the fight was a win for Oliveira, but it was a win for Oliveira's experience and technique. It was a win of technique because Oliveira, when he was younger, very, very flashy, jumping, spinning, all this stuff. Now, look at his posture when he fights. It's hardly ever not good posture. When he's following people to the ground, posture. When he's standing up fighting, posture. It was a win for technique at the end of the day because Tony Ferguson overwhelms people with crazy stuff. And anytime he would try this crazy stuff on Oliveira, it wouldn't work because Oliveira was being technical. And yeah, man, it was all the circles of MMA, all the talking heads, everyone. One thing I'm really liking is that people are making sure to give Oliveira his due before going on to like dump all over Tony Ferguson. They're making sure Oliveira gets his due, which is great, and I appreciate it. I think it's required reading. It's a required thing to do.
Yeah, there's only two things I want next for Charles Oliveira. He either needs to fight Khabib for the belt, which isn't going to happen, or he fights the winner of Conor versus Dustin 2 for the vacant title. That is the only option that I want to see from him.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with those.
With this win over Tony Ferguson, people are talking about like, Oliveira versus like Oliveira versus an RDA or Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. I think he's put himself past both of those, any of those type of fights.
Come on, man! Like
Oliveira
that would be ridiculous. You have Oliveira who has won a bunch straight, all by stoppage. He just beat the number 3 or 4.
3. The only 2 people that should be ranked above him are Conor and Dustin. So that's it. I mean,
my man, do not take an RDA fight. For the love of God, don't take an RDA fight. All we need is RDA. Dude, no. RDA, listen, RDA should be fighting Chandler. Tony Ferguson's next fight should either be against Felder or Dan Hooker.
Yeah.
That's it. Anything with Charles Oliveira, if Charles Oliveira ain't staring down gold, what the hell are we doing here? I don't understand. You got to reward excellence in the sport.
Yeah.
And that was excellence on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then, of course, speaking of excellence, speaking of awesome performances, no loser in the main event. Deiveson Figueiredo ties. He draws a draw against his challenger Moreno. Both men coming into this fight 3 weeks notice, and fastest turnaround in UFC history for a title bout. Also, there was another one. Quickest turnaround, right? And then also quickest turnaround for champion and challenger. Quickest turnaround with a defense. And there's something else. But it was phenomenal regardless of the records. Back and forth and drama. It was a drama-filled fight. And that's a thing that I think but one thing that boxing has, they have more rounds, so there's more chapters to the story of a fight. This felt like so many chapters were in this fight.
Yeah. It was an excellent fight. I'm really loving having Figueiredo as champion in the division. Moreno is an excellent, proven number 1 contender. We're just getting something from these guys that we didn't get with the DJ and the Cejudos as champions. There's a Figueiredo is willing to put himself in the fire in a risky position that other people wouldn't be willing. They wouldn't be willing to put themselves into such dangerous positions when they're the ones with the belt on the line. But he is inclined to put himself in the fire to make it exciting and to do some crazy stuff, to swing heavy leather. And it's amazing. It's great. It's a fantastic fight. I would probably agree that it's the best flyweight title fight in my opinion in the UFC. Really, its only competition would be either the second Cejudo fight or the Tim Elliott fight maybe against DJ.
Also,
the
Demetrius
first
Johnson
Dodson fight.
and Dodson 2.
Oh, you thought the second one? I thought the first Dodson fight was a lot closer than the second one.
Well, maybe
Either one.
we'll see.
There's the options.
I want to rewatch some of DJ's stuff, because we're treated now to the first time at flyweight a fighter whose base seems to be knocking people's chins off, whereas our inaugural champion and our second champion, both wrestlers, even though I would say that Demetrius Johnson in time, obviously he proved himself to be one of the greatest mixed martial artists ever. And I mean like a guy who has all the skills, like a guy who, when you look at them on a graph, like all the levels are just about even, as far as their proficiency. But yeah, Figueiredo is, I think I said to you on Saturday, he's flyweight Lawler. That's what he is. He knocks people dead. That's how he became a champion, and that's how he intends to stay a champion. Well, but the scary thing about Figueiredo is his ground game is really good too.
Yeah.
So, but he doesn't often choose to take it there. So, yeah, man. What do you do next with these two 125ers? It seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
Back in there.
Yeah. That's what you do. There's a draw in a title fight. It's what you got to do.
Yeah, I know that I've been listening to some stuff and some, talking head type stuff. And there seems to be a prevailing sentiment that, like, Figueiredo was clearly the better fighter, and without the point deduction, it would have been a rather comfortable unanimous decision for Figueiredo.
Yeah, it seems to be what people think, yeah.
Not what I saw. I thought that it was... I saw a much closer fight. I mean, I saw a draw. Point deduction or not. It was... And actually, with the draw at the end of the fight, I felt as though Moreno, with the point deduction, did enough to win.
Yeah.
Without the point deduction, I felt like a draw would have been fair. I'm down. I'm down to see it again. Also, I don't... Dude, whoever Google's paying to track me is really messing up. Do you see this? I got a Clorox ad in Spanish.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, they really, they got to investigate that. They're slipping. So that. Do you have any other comments on UFC 256?
Nope. Good card.
Right. So, in the interest of time, next week, well, not next week, this Saturday, we have Thompson versus Neal, with actually some pretty good fights on here, if they can avoid getting COVID. There's a lot of names on here and a lot of fights that, or a lot of fighters that maybe if their matchup I'm not necessarily crazy about, but like the individual fighter I like to watch. Michelle Pereira taking on Chaos Williams. Huh? Yeah, I'm down. Marlon Moraes taking on Rob Font. What? Yeah, of course. I'll watch that all day. Well, for 15 minutes or whatever. Anthony Pettis taking on Alex Moreno. That's a good fight. Remember the name, Brad.
Oh, yes.
You got it? You remember it?
Oh, it is remembered.
Bilal Muhammad taking on Diego Lima. Super down. Yeah, this fight, this card, has like, again, these COVID cards, they're either people I've never heard of or people that I would assume most people have never heard of,
Mhm.
but me as an MMA fan absolutely love. Jose Aldo, Marlon Vera, what? Dog. What do you
Back
think
on
about
this
this
thing.
card? I don't necessarily want to go fight by fight because I'm pretty sure we're within like 10, 15 minutes of the hour mark. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. Um, so what are of this card? What
It's
are
got
some
some heat on it.
yeah.
I'll just go through and hit a couple real quick. Let me go from the top down. So, Wonder Boy versus Jeff Neal. That one is interesting because Wonder Boy actually, neither one of them fought this year. Wonder Boy coming off that win over what's his name, Vincente Luque, which actually was the fight that got him back on track after getting brutally murked by Pettis. So there's a question about if Stephen Thompson is still an elite guy or if he's more on the possibly starting to hit the decline. So we'll find out against a young guy with crazy powerful hands, Jeff Neal. So that'll be fun. I really don't know how I feel about that one yet. I haven't thought too much about the main event. I lean towards Wonder Boy.
Yeah. Just to add this real quick. Thompson is a really weird fight to try and propel yourself to the next level with because he's so unique. It's really weird to use him as a gatekeeper because it's not like his style is so unique that being able to beat him is not an indicate. It's an indication that you can solve a puzzle,
Yeah.
but it's not an indication that you'll be able to handle like skill for skill the guys above him. Now, you know what I'm saying? It's a weird,
Yes. Everyone above him is a wrestler.
yeah,
The top of the welterweight division is wrestlers.
it's a weird gatekeeping type fight. But I do love it for Stephen Thompson as far as like Jeff Neal is the next generation of mixed martial artists. Can he turn him back?
And technically, Stephen Thompson's denier at the top, Woodley, is gone. He has no history with Usman or Colby. He's never, or well, he actually beat Masvidal,
Mm-hmm.
but he's never fought those top two guys in the division or Gilbert Burns. So a big win for Stephen Thompson could do wonders for him, and that either one of those guys could really get him up there. So that's cool. Aldo Vera. This one's very weird to me because after Aldo lost the title fight at 135, I saw no reason to continue cutting to bantamweight. It looks like he just wants to continue fighting at bantamweight as a gatekeeper, being ranked number 10.
No, that's it. Those again, those are those sneaky tapology rankings. I would guess.
I want to say his real ranking is probably like 5, and Vera's probably
Yeah.
like 15 or something. But like I still don't see the point in Aldo continuing to fight. Well, I don't know what period in general.
Yeah.
If you like, I don't know if he loses here. I mean, you've been denied at 145 and 135. What do you do? That's another guy that's like, dude, you're looking at the chopping block. If you lose like really badly, if you get stopped in this fight or like get dominated, not looking good for Aldo.
No. It's
Can't even go up to lightweight. Go the opposite direction. Dude, we talked about lightweight for so many years.
yeah. I mean, one of I would love to do a video about like lost bouts, and him versus Pettis is one that's still I really
Promotional shoot on the
never
beach.
got to see it.
Yeah, they did the whole promotional shoot on the beach. They had all those photos for it and everything. I used to have the poster for it.
Oh yeah.
One of the many.
Was that one of the ones from the bar and grill?
Yep. Back when they used to be double sided. I also had the Aldo versus Eric Koch poster.
Oh yeah, both of the canceled.
Yeah.
Both of those.
Chaos Williams and Pereira, yeah, that's gonna be cool.
Bang.
Marias looking to get back on track. That's also cool. Tybura generally unimpresses me every single time. I expect him to lose to Greg Hardy. Jillian Robertson, super high on her. She's a beast. Great grappling and ground game. She also has taken on a late replacement in Talia Santos, which is a good record. And Anthony Pettis. Yeah, we'll see if the rumors are true about him just wanting to fight out his contract and get out of there. But it is fairly suspect that him fighting a random 170 guy on 2 weeks' notice.
Hey man, I think if you're looking to draw a dude that you just want to put out real quick just to get it over with, Alex Moreno is not it's a pretty terrible pick. It's a pretty terrible pick because Moreno is violent, man, and he throws down. His boxing is phenomenal. I don't know if it's as good as Pettis's, but he hits really hard. And he's good. He's good. And he's young too. I think actually, you know what? I'm not confident that Alex Moreno is super young. 30. Okay. So like, you know, not like, you know, Chase Hooper, but not Andrei Arlovsky, you know. Who else? We got
there's cool fights down there, but that's about all.
These fights will prove to be fun. And and before we get out of here, we'll just do some real quick little things here in the next couple minutes. Yeah. What was that stand-up special? I feel like we should do a watch party for it.
It's gonna be so awful. He's so bad.
Hey man, I mean, listen, I am such an MMA fan that I literally can't enjoy separate things without references to MMA. Like, are there NFL comedians?
That's the thing. I'm like, who is this? Who is this aimed at?
It's the most pandering. It's one of the. I feel like the UFC thinks I'm dumb. I can't, or like
you're too dumb to even pick your own comedians that you like.
Yeah, like, oh no, there's no what's this? A man speaking on stage about he's humorous. Wow, he speaks about MMA, which I understand.
He speaks of the fight. I understand the fight.
I understand the fights, but he also makes me laugh. What is this? Yeah, we got to do a watch party or something. We got to figure out.
We'll do something with that.
Dude, it looks horrible. Okay. Now, so Anthony Johnson signs to Bellator. The breaking news of today?
No, that was the other day. Today was Yoel.
No. That's what I'm saying. Yoel Romero. Today, it was announced, right?
Yes, today was Yoel. Yep.
Yoel headed to Bellator. That's pretty big news. And he's fighting at 205.
Yeah.
The 205 division. Some say it's the best 205-pound division in MMA. And by some, I mean Scott Coker. And by adding Yoel Romero to that mix, his argument does get a little bit better, but still it's not correct.
Well, if you go through and start listing those light heavyweights that Bellator has, you'll very quickly notice a reoccurring theme of them. Let's see, with our Ryan Baders and our Phil Davises and our Rumbles and our Yoel Romeros. Oh man,
hey, I'm down to see.
From?
Hey man, Vadim Nemkov needs a dance partner, and I would love to see him fight Yoel Romero.
Here's the thing, though. I feel like you have to give the first title shot to Corey Anderson. Because
why? Because he beat Melvin Manhoef?
Yes, because he was the one. He was the guy that was like, here's the deal, right? I'm gonna run over to Bellator and snatch an easy belt real quick. And then, and then everyone's like, nah, wait a minute. You ain't finna go over there and snatch that easy belt. I'm finna go over there and snatch that easy belt. And then Yoel and Rumble and all of them are like, nah, son, we finna get there first. So even if it'll be a Phil Davis situation.
This doesn't
Even if
work
he
like
gets the
that.
belt, he gets murked immediately.
It's a thing that like I wish fighters and I wish fans in general would like just understand that it doesn't work like that. Like I can't think of a time where a fighter who was kind of washing out in the UFC leaves the UFC and then goes on just this crazy unstoppable run, just turning back all challengers. It doesn't ever work like that because you know why? Because by the time these fighters get out of the UFC, they've been in some crazy, they've seen some shit, man.
Yeah.
They're not the same guy. They're not going to go in. Yoel Romero probably will lose to Vadim Nemkov when they eventually inevitably fight. I think Yoel Romero would lose to Bader.
To
Is that a
Bader?
hot take?
Yeah.
Is that a hot take?
Well, here's the thing. I think that Bader, it's proven. This isn't even a thing. Bader is a significantly easier fight than Nemkov.
Yeah,
Which
of course.
why I think all these guys should run up to heavyweight real quick. That's why I think they were thought when he was still the light heavyweight champ, especially Rumble. Rumble's like, oh, that dude I knocked out in like 3 seconds has 2 belts over there. Yeah, I'll sure. I'll go over there real quick.
Oh, not so fast, Brad. Because while you think Anthony Johnson wanted to go to Bellator, no.
No, he didn't.
According to Dana White, new Bellator's Anthony Johnson wants to be in the UFC. It just didn't work out. Ask him. That's his business, not mine. Which, can I say 1 second? Dana White, the UFC is specifically your business.
Yeah.
You know. What do you mean it's not your business? Okay, whatever. But yeah, apparently Anthony Johnson wanted to be in the UFC. It just didn't work out. Ask him. That's his business, not mine, says Dana White. What do you think about that?
I mean, that is seemed to be all their indications leading up to this. I mean, Rumble had talked about it, wanting to come back in the UFC. But whatever, this seemed like another one of those Chael situations. You recall Chael, like when he was in the UFC and he went away for the drug suspension. When he came back, he was still under contract with the UFC, and everyone fully expected him to come back, but something behind the scenes happened, and he ended up in Bellator, and this felt the same way. So I don't know. Here's what I'll say. I fully expect if Anthony Johnson of all these people that just went to Bellator, I expect Anthony Johnson to do the best, and I expect that if he goes over there and wins a belt, that the UFC brings him back, and they'll sign him again.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. If there's time. I mean, I don't know how many fights Johnson was signed to, and he's not young.
It didn't take long. I think he could within two fights win a belt in Bellator. But it's also what kind of contract he's locked into. I want to say it was only 3 fights though, right?
Okay, so that's pretty good. That's not a crazy long contract. But also, let's see how much Anthony Johnson enjoys the sport when he's doing it again.
That's true.
The first time he left, he just felt burnt out, and he had that utterly bizarre bout against DC, their second fight. Yeah, man. I hope that he finds what he's looking for, competing again, and not that when a fighter comes back, you hope that whatever they were looking for, they find in the sport, and they aren't just settling by fighting.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, my friend, That's it. That's all I got. There was a list of fighters who didn't fight for Man and Bronstetter, but other than that, that's all I got.
Yeah.
We've been here for long enough, and I don't want to overstay our welcome with the audience. You know, they got stuff to do. They got places.
Respect their boundaries.
I respect their boundaries. I respect them. I respect their love, and I respect their respect. Yeah. Let me. I'll get the old. There we go. Well, it's been a great week, a great reunion, and a great weekend of fights last weekend. Saturday's shaping up to be pretty good. And then in a couple weeks, we get Risen's New Year's show with the stars of JMMA, which is a disappointment, but I'll probably still watch it because I do every year. Yeah, Brad, you got any thoughts before we get out of here?
No thoughts. Good week. Next week's going to be a good week. Everybody, thanks for the continued support. Check us out on the channel. Check out our clips. Give us thumbs up and likes. Comment below if you got any questions, want to hit us up. All our deets are in the comment section below. Catch y'all next week.
Perfect. See ya.